When the clock strikes midnight, the murmurs begin. But this isn't just another spooky story time. It's a bone-chilling blend of shadowy fiction, disturbing true crime, eerie legends, and interviews that just might haunt you. From cursed hallways to the darkest corners of the human psyche, nothing is off the table. And if our voices have found you, it may already be too late. New episodes drop each week. Follow Murmurs at midnight and invite the darkness in.
Welcome to Murmurs at Midnight, where we unravel the darkest corners of the human psyche, piecing together the stories that haunt us long after the lights go out. Before the first word spoke, before the tail unspools its teeth, you ought to know the kind of land we're dealing with. This ain't the kind of place you find on a map, not really. It's the kind you stumble into when your tires get too curious on back roads that ain't had a name in 50 years. It's tucked down in a part of the Ozarks where the ridges run tired and close together, where the trees don't just grow, they watch. Where fog lingers longer than it ought to, thick as breath behind a locked door. Folks here don't say much that ain't asked for, and when they do speak, it's with their eyes low, their voices soft, like the hills might overhear. 'Cause they understand that not just war and famine and bad years, but things older, things with claws and names we ain't meant to say aloud. See, up in this forgotten patch of Boone County, Arkansas, deep within the Ozark Mountains, the dirt holds stories, and not the kind you tell kids to sleep. No, these stories scratch and gnaw. They wait under floorboards and behind tree trunks, patient as rot. And sometimes, when the wind don't blow right and the dogs start whining for no reason at all, the land opens its mouth. What comes out ain't always lookin' to be seen, but it sure as hell remembers who disturbed its sleep. So sit quiet now and don't breathe too loud. And whatever you do, don't look toward the tree line after dark. This here is an original tale called The Trees Don't Sing Like They Used to. And they don't, because something made them stop. Chapter 1. It remembered something you didn't. Jacob Miller never had much use for fancy talk or big ideas that didn't grow out of the dirt. Folks around here knew him as a quiet man who worked hard and didn't meddle. He grew up rough and rooted, the way most do when the hills raise you instead of people. His patch of land, left to him by his daddy and his daddy before that, sat snug between two tired ridges that held the morning mist like old hands hold grudges. Most mornings, Jacob was out before the rooster made up his mind. He'd yank on those weary boots, more patch than hide by now, and step into the chill like it owed him something. Field work didn't wait for aches and pains. He'd milk the cow, toss feed to the hens, spit on that busted south gate and curse it again while tying it shut with baling wire and spite. Buck, his old mutt with more bark than brains, always found something to growl at, shadows mostly. Jacob'd holler at him to hush and earn his keep for once. September slipped in like a whisper that turned sharp on the tongue. The air held smoke and soil and something else, something that didn't smell quite right. Couldn't name it, but it scratched at the back of your mind like a memory trying to get out. Come dusk, the sky turned that kind of purple that don't seem real, and the woods went quiet. Not soft quiet, no, it was that heavy stillness, the kind that settles wrong in your bones, making your skin tighten like it knows something you don't. Jacob felt it. He didn't speak on it, but he felt it. The cicadas quit their racket early, and Buck stopped barking altogether. Not tired-like, more like he'd heard something bigger than him out there. Something bigger than him that told him to shut up and listen. Then Buck vanished. No yelp or scuffle, he was just gone, left his collar sitting neatly on the porch like he'd undressed himself for the dark. Jacob called until his voice cracked and wandered out back with his .22 slung over his back, whistling into silence so thick it made the trees lean in. But the woods didn't answer. They didn't move. They only watched. 3 sunrises later, Paxton down the ridge let out a scream so raw it made the crows scatter. Jacob and Sheriff Dunley rolled up at the same time before the dust settled. Paxton was pacing like his boots didn't fit anymore, rattled all over. In the middle of his field lay that prize goat he wouldn't shut up about at every damn potluck. Split clean down the middle, with guts laid out in a line like someone set the table and walked off. The men could see not a drop of blood in sight. Paxton was pale as lye soap. "Ain't no man done this," he muttered. "Ain't no part of this natural." Sheriff squatted beside the carcass, chewing a matchstick like it owed him money. He didn't speak at first, just stared at the dirt like he expected it to fess up. Jacob's eyes went to the paw prints, 4 of them, larger than a man's hand and deep, spread wide like they belonged to a thing that didn't much care what it stepped on. The claw marks long and slow, like it was dragging blades. "Coyote," Sheriff finally said, though it came out more like a prayer than a fact. Jacob didn't bother pretending to believe that. Coyotes don't peel meat like it's a holiday ham, and they sure don't walk like they got no weight to 'em. The sheriff didn't argue. He didn't confirm either. No, he just stood up and walked back to his rig, jaw set like he was biting something bitter. By nightfall, word was already sitting in folks' kitchens and curling round gas station porches. Some said mountain lion. Others, well, they looked away when they spoke, like their eyes had seen too many winters. They said maybe it was something older. Something that remembered a time before fences and power lines. "A wampus cat," someone whispered down at Tillman's. Not loud, but not quite quiet enough. Jacob heard it, but he didn't acknowledge it. He didn't need to. He didn't believe in critters from stories, never had. But that night, he double-checked the barn and left the porch light burning. Set the old 12-gauge by the door, the same one he hadn't touched since that wicked winter back in '93, when the wind howled through the valley like it was calling names. Just after midnight, it came. Not footsteps or even a twig snap, a howl. Low and long, as if it came up from under the earth. It was somehow sorrowful and angry at the same time, like it had been waiting a long time. It wasn't a dog, wasn't a bobcat or a bear, and it sure as heck wasn't a coyote. It was something else, something that never forgot the way this land used to be, something that remembered what we were before we forgot to look over our shoulders. Chapter 2: The Part That Couldn't Rest. Next morning, Jacob woke with a hollowness stretched out just under his ribs, like something had settled in overnight and meant to stay a while. It wasn't pain, not exactly. More like the ache you get when a storm's rolling in and your bones know before the sky does. He moved slow, like the air was thick. Still went through the motions, scooped cornmeal, hauled feed, set out a bowl like Buck might trot up out of nowhere, tail waggin' and tongue hangin'. He knew better, but hope doesn't always make sense. Habit doesn't either. The quiet that followed Buck's absence, it wasn't natural. It pressed on things, on thoughts, on breath. That kind of silence don't sit still. Makes a man itch. Makes him speak just to hear his own voice push back the stillness. Jacob was leaning lazy on the counter down at Tucker's feed, thumb dragging circles on the wood grain when it slipped out like it didn't much matter. "Seen tracks by the creek this mornin'," he said low, eyes on the feed sacks. "Neighbor's cat's gone, just the collar left stuck in a fork of a sycamore, 10 foot up if it was an inch." Didn't nobody answer right away, not even Amos. That place, usually filled with stories and small-town bickering, went tight and quiet like a balloon about to pop. Amos Tucker, who'd been selling seed, worming dogs, and spreading gossip since folks still rode mules to church, leaned in slow, like gravity worked heavier for what he was about to say. His voice barely cleared the hum in the air. "You go talk to Maudie Littlefeather." Jacob looked up. She's the last one still drawing breath who remembers what these hills try to forget. Jacob had heard of her, sure, everyone had, but not in any casual way. Her name came up in whispers, stitched into stories that trailed off into silence. The kind of name church folk didn't say loud for fear it might answer back. Still, Jacob nodded. "I reckon it's time." He waited till sun started sliding behind the ridge, dragging shadows long across the gravel. Jacob took the river road, rough and coiled, with trees arching overhead like old church rafters. The smell changed out that way. Wet pine, smoke caught in bark, a little rot clinging to the edges of things that don't quite die. Maudie Littlefeather's place wasn't so much a house as a heap of stone hugged tightly by trees. Wind chimes of bone, antler, rusted keys, and colored glass danced in breezes Jacob couldn't feel. They whispered, somewhere between music and warning. Protection bundles swung from the branches, red cloth knotted around feathers, herbs, and smooth stones worn thumb-thin. They moved like they were thinking. He laid the firewood down carefully on her step, hickory, split and cured just right, and raised his hand to knock. "You've seen it." Jacob froze, hand still in the air. "Beg pardon, ma'am?" "The Ewa," she said, rolling the name soft but heavy, like a stone dropped in water. "Wampus cat, you white people call it." The door opened by itself, although nobody had touched it. She was just there, standing in the dimness like she'd always been part of the doorway. Her face was lined deeply, carved like a riverbed that's seen too many storms. Eyes clouded with years, but steady, seeing past what a man carries on the outside. Jacob stepped in, hat gripped like it might float off if he let go. Inside smelled like cedar smoke, dry lavender, and something older. Earth warmed by time, maybe, or bones that remembered. "I seen tracks," he said after a spell. "No scent. Lost my dog. Then I heard a sound didn't belong to the night." She moved through the room like she knew where every jar and shadow belonged. Ran her fingers across bundles tied up in twine like she was greeting kinfolk. "My grandmother's mother gave me the story," she said, voice low and settled, back before her mind drifted off into the river fog. "Never needed writin'. It's carved in stone, whispered in the hush when the woods go quiet all at once." Jacob didn't move, just let her speak, the way folks let rain fall on dry land. "A long time ago," she said, eyes staring through the wall, "before y'all fenced off the hollers and told the trees what roads to follow, men would dance. Deep in the woods, under stars bright enough to see your sins in. They called spirits, not to tame 'em, but to learn, to listen." She paused, and the house seemed to lean in closer. "No women were allowed, not 'cause they weren't welcome, but 'cause spirits don't forgive interruptions. One woman, though, curious, bold, proud, draped herself in cougar hide, and slipped into the circle. Thought powered respect her want. The spirits saw her. They didn't kill her. Worse, they bound her, gave her the beast's shape, but left her with a human heart. Now she walks, watches, waits. Jacob swallowed hard, like something dry caught in his throat. Why now? She looked at him long, like she was looking through him, not at him. Because y'all carved up the land without asking, dug deep where things sleep, took without thanks, and didn't leave offerings for what was already here. The hills cry out, and she hears, always has, but now she stirs. Outside, the wind chimes didn't sing, they shrieked. Sharp, sudden, like glass crying out. Jacob rose, slow as syrup. Didn't know whether he was supposed to kneel or run. You can't shoot what don't bleed. Can't trap what don't hunger like you do. She'll let you walk, maybe, if she thinks you've changed. But if she don't? Jacob didn't ask for the rest. He already knew. Behind him, the woods had gone still. Inside, something old had opened its eyes. Chapter 3, She's Huntin' Again. The chickens were gone come first light. Jacob stepped out onto the porch, coffee cupped in both hands, waiting on the usual sounds, clucking, flapping, that one rooster crowing like he had something to prove. But it was still, not peaceful, not right, just a hold-your-breath kind of still. He followed his boots through the wet grass, steam rising off the mug, heartbeat picking up for reasons it hadn't named yet. Feathers lay scattered like prayers gone unanswered. No blood, no drag marks, just tufts of down glinting in the dew, caught on grass and fence post like they'd drifted down out of the sky. The coop door was hanging open, not busted, not even scratched, just swung wide like somebody had turned the latch real gentle. Next night, it was the neighbors' calves. Spring-born, still shaky on their legs, spotting the world new every time they blinked, and just like that, gone. Their mamas stood at the fence line, still as fence posts, eyes wide but not making a sound, like they knew calling out wouldn't bring anything back. Jacob didn't say much that day, didn't need to. He went to the shed, pulled out the trail cams he'd picked up last year when the coyotes started getting bold. He set 3 of them, one by the chicken run, another by the back fence, and the last up by that old ridge trail that hadn't been walked since his granddad was young. Then he waited. When the sun dropped behind the hills and the whippoorwills started singing that sad, lonesome song, Jacob took his seat by the front window. Shotgun across his lap, hands resting quiet. Erin rocked beside him, already dozing with her head lolling soft against the chair back. The kids were upstairs, all packed into one room, candle flickering on the sill like it might hold the dark at bay. The night passed with the kind of slowness that makes a man think too hard. No sound, no scratching or howling, not even the trees rustled. But the game cams told a different story come dawn. Jacob sat there in the shed with the footage looping slow, watching with a stillness that didn't feel like his own. It was just past midnight when it came stepping out of the tree line like it had poured itself out of the shadows. Long and lean, it moved like a whisper over ice. 4 legs at first glance, black fur, thick and mean. But then it rose up on its hind legs, not straight, not human, but standing enough to rattle something deep in his chest. Its back curled like a cat mid-pounce, but the arms, not forelegs, swung forward slow, elbows bent wrong, too low, too long. Underneath the skin, muscle rippled like creek water over stone, unnatural. And then it turned and faced the camera. Jacob flinched so hard the stool kicked back. His hand hit the floor before he realized he'd moved. Narrator whispered, "That face, God help him, it was a woman's. Or it had been once. The skin stretched too tightly across a shape that didn't fit. Mouth twisted like it remembered how to smile, but forgot why. Eyes glowed yellow, not with anger, but with something older and deeper. Like time had settled into her and refused to leave. She saw the lens. She looked clean through it. And she smiled. Not like someone you'd recognize. Like something wearing someone you once knew." Jacob didn't remember climbing into the truck. He didn't recall the engine starting up. He just found himself tearing down the gravel road, tires throwing dust high into the trees, hands shaking so bad he had to pull off near the Miller Bend and puke into the ditch. By the time he hit Maudie Littlefeather's front steps, she was already waiting, like she'd known, like the wind had warned her. He held out the camera with both hands, couldn't speak, couldn't even look her in the eye. She took one glance at the screen and her knees gave way like the earth had yanked her down. She hit the porch boards hard, but she didn't cry out, just let the tears come, slow and quiet. Her breath hitched in her chest like it hurt to pull in air. Maudie, rough, hoarse. She's huntin' again. And she didn't mean animals. Chapter 4. They buried her shame in the dirt. A few days passed. Leastways, Jacob figured they did. He'd lost track somewhere between the weight in his chest and the feeling that time had started moving sideways. He might have counted once, scratching lines in the doorframe like his daddy used to do in the chicken shed, but after a while, the hours just bled together, quiet, thick, like creek water rolling over stone. Nothing much stirred, but the land felt wrong. Not a loud wrong, just off, like it was listening. Like it knew what was coming and had already made peace with it. Nights were worse. The wind that used to rattle the pine needles and stir the porch swing had gone off somewhere, leaving the woods so quiet even the frogs shut up. Just the occasional pop from the rafters or the tap of a shutter knocking against old wood, like the house was complaining about how long it stood watch. Then one gray morning, the bell up on Rabbit Ridge started ringing. Not in no real rush, just two slow clangs. Not enough to panic a soul, but enough to make him uneasy. Jacob felt it in his molars, like metal grinding down to root. That bell hadn't sounded since old Clara Dunley passed in her sleep 5 winters and 2 dry summers ago. He grabbed his coat, not even waiting for the kettle to hiss. By the time he pulled up, the church lot was full of trucks parked all half sideways like the drivers hadn't had the nerve to square 'em up. Doors left hanging open, engines still ticking. Sheriff Dunley stood stiff near the edge of the graveyard, jaw set like stone, eyes thin as fish line. "Sinkhole," he said before Jacob could ask, "there in the fence line." Jacob followed him past buckled headstones and blackberries that long taken over the back row. The ground gave way just beyond the cedar cross planted for someone who'd never gotten a proper stone. The hole wasn't wide, but deep, like the earth had split its lip and showed what had been keeping to itself, and what it kept was bones. Not a hog or a deer, not even a cow, long bones and human-shaped. Some blackened, some white with time. But what turned Jacob cold was what lay on the edge of that dark, a bundle. Red cloth, frayed and faded, knotted tight around feathers, stones, maybe a claw, maybe a tooth. He didn't lean close enough to tell. It looked near identical to the ones hanging from Maudie Littlefeather's porch. Only this one wasn't strung for protection. This one had been buried. Someone behind him muttered, "Jesus." "Don't say that here." Jacob just stared. He didn't know what to feel, but his stomach had gone thin, like a string stretched too far. Later, after folks cleared out and the light started sliding down behind the ridge, Jacob found himself driving. He didn't think about it, but just ended up on the road heading east, gravel snapping under tire like dry bone. He didn't mean to go to Maudie's. It's not like he planned it. His hands just knew the way. She was already rocking slowly when he pulled up, wrapped in a shawl the color of riverbank moss after the spring melt. Her eyes caught his before the truck rolled to a stop. "You dug where you shouldn't have," she said. "It wasn't me," Jacob answered, though he knew it didn't matter much. She nodded, not accusing, but not letting him off either. "They buried her shame down there," she said, eyes not leaving his. "The part that knew too much, the part that couldn't rest quiet. And your kind, y'all cracked her open." He didn't say a word. He didn't have a single one worth speaking. She stood slowly, bones creaking like they were made of old wood. She walked inside without looking back. The screen door groaned shut behind her, same as a sigh. That night, Jacob sat on the porch, lamp burning low. No wind, no sound. Then the light flickered just once and went out, like it knew what was coming and didn't want to see it. Then he heard it. Not footsteps, not claws, just breath. Deep, measured, heavy like old lungs filling slowly. It didn't belong to a bear or a bobcat. It belonged to something that remembered. And it was standing just beyond the window pane. Chapter 5. Marked Men Never Leave Whole. 4 men gone, just like that. All of them raised within a stone's skip of the riverbend. Men who worked the same fields their daddies once plowed and their granddaddies whispered about when the woods got too still. Good men, churchmen. Farmers with dirt under their nails and boots waiting by the same back step for 20 winters running. They vanished like smoke and wind. Their trucks left humming at the edge of tree lines, doors hanging open, radios buzzing with that static that sounds like voices if you're tired enough. The dogs wouldn't follow their scent, not even the brave ones, especially not them. And when the men came back, if that's what you want to call it, they weren't right. The coroner didn't have much to say, just kept his voice down and his hands busy. What came out of those woods didn't look mauled and didn't look drowned. No claw marks, no bloating, no signs of struggle. They were laid soft beneath cedar limbs, arms folded neat across the chest like somebody with a conscience did the burying. But their eyes, they were gone, scooped out cleanly. And their throats, cut deep and even, not hacked or ripped. No rage in it, just precision, like it'd been done slowly with purpose, like someone meant to take something. Sheriff Dunley told the paper it was a wild animal, said it like he was reading off a menu, flat and false. But his pipe hand trembled now, and folks noticed he'd stopped walking his mutt after sundown. Didn't patrol no more either, just sat behind his desk with the blinds pulled and a rifle under the chair, safety off. The women changed too. They didn't say much, but you saw it. The way they kept their kids tight to the hip and locked their doors an hour earlier each night. No one grilled outside. No more porch sitting. The old sleeping arrangements got rearranged. Mothers, sisters, cousins bunking together, windows nailed shut, shotgun on the kitchen table. Even the church ladies gave up Wednesday fellowship. Folks understood, even if no one said it, something out there didn't want men, not anymore. Erin Miller, steady as bedrock, hard-headed as river cane, looked Jacob straight in the eye one evening, her voice low, sharp. "You need to take the kids and go," she said. "I ain't askin', I'm tellin'." Jacob leaned over the sink, arms crossed tight like he was holding himself together. His jaw worked, but only dust came out. "I can't," he said. And he meant it, though he felt the truth of her words gnawing down deep, like something in him already knew what she'd guessed. She didn't press it, just nodded and swept the kids' beds into the parlor, laid her own blanket on the floor beside him, and burned the last of the lantern oil every night until it gave out. She braided her hair tighter and kept her prayers quiet. Jacob stopped sleeping entirely. Every night after the house fell still, after the crickets gave up their tune, the darkness would settle over him like a wet quilt, thick, weighty, and cold as riverbed stone. He'd sit in that old chair, shotgun resting across his legs, staring out the window toward the tree line, waiting for the air to shift again. That's when the dreams came. First, they were broken things, a yellow glint in shadow, a whisper in the pine, the sense of something breathing in a place too narrow for breath. But by the third night, the pieces came together. He was barefoot, standing in the woods under a moon so bright it sliced the trees into ribs of bone. Leaves wet beneath him, cold soaking into his soles. And then she came. She didn't walk, she glided, smooth and slow, like smoke trickling downhill. Her limbs glistened, short, thick fur clinging to muscle that moved too fluid, too silent. Her face wasn't quite human, but wasn't not either. Her eyes blazed lantern yellow, and though her mouth never moved, her voice slipped right into him like creek water down a hollow log. You watched when you shouldn't have. You took when you knew better. He tried to move, but couldn't, not even to blink. You smelled the blood and stayed. You looked through the glass and never turned away. Then her hand came forward, if it was a hand, too long, too many joints, fingers curled backward like twigs in winter, nails like bone grown wrong. She pressed her palm to his chest, right over the beat of his heart. You're marked now. She leaned in, her breath foul, like frost on firewood. And marked men never leave whole. Jacob always woke up gasping, drenched in sweat. The room quiet, but watchful. Aaron never asked, just poured his coffee slow, hands shaking more each morning, eyes on the woods like she was listening for the end of something. That night, just before sleep could catch him again, he heard the wind chimes stir on the porch. They hadn't moved in days, and this time, they weren't warning. They were calling. Chapter 6. That's all she respects. The day Mady came down off the ridge, the wind shifted hard out of the west and brought with it the smell of burnt cedar and something older hiding underneath, something Jacob couldn't rightly name but felt deep in his knuckles. Like his bones had memory, and it started stirring. She came slowly, wrapped in a gray shawl that whipped behind her like wings on a bird too tired to fly far. Her boots kicked up dust but didn't make a sound. Didn't say a word till she hit the porch, one hand resting gentle on the banister like she wasn't sure it'd hold. You got 3 nights left, she said. Maybe less, depending how you breathe. Jacob swallowed hard. His palms slicked up again, so he wiped them down his jeans. Tried standing still, though every nerve in him twitched like a hound smelling a storm. What do I do? Even though part of him knew there wasn't no winning play in it. Mady didn't sit, just stared into the trees, where the shadows came early these days, thick, clinging things that didn't move even when the wind blew. Fire and cedar ash, she said. Not advice, more like a memory passed down through bloodlines and bone. That's all ever slowed her. That's all she respects. Jacob waited, hoping maybe there'd be more, a charm, a name, something to hold on to, but Mady just turned, headed back toward the road without looking behind. Her feet made no sound on the path, her voice hanging in the air like the last note from a cracked bell. But it won't stop her if she's already chose you. He stood there long after she disappeared down the bend. Then he moved, quick and focused, the way a man does when he's setting up his own grave. He ringed the house in cedar ash, thick lines all around, doubled up on the corners, poured heavy by the coop where the chill never left. Then he lit every candle he could find, some tall, some squat, some beeswax, some store-bought, and placed them in every window, like he was begging the dark to mind its manners. Erin didn't say much while he worked, just tied her hair back with one of her mama's old red ribbons, hung Cherokee knots over every frame, whispering soft words in a language the land still knew, even if most folks forgot. The sun dipped fast that night, like it didn't want to see what was coming. The woods quieted again, too quiet, like they were listening. Then the dogs started. One from the East Ridge, then two more from Cotton Hollow. Long, broken howls that cracked sharp halfway through, like something had grabbed their voices mid-cry. Erin was at the back window when she froze, fingers still gripping the curtain. She didn't blink. Erin, tight, whispering, "Jacob, she's here." He ran to the door, but she didn't move, just pointed. Out past the barn, where the moon barely touched the grass, something moved, crawling, low, slow, like it had time, like it already knew the house wasn't going nowhere. It moved like wet smoke, dragging itself through the brush. Its limbs bent wrong, stretched long, body rippling beneath black fur that shined like it just come from deep water, but there hadn't been no rain. And its face, God help him, it didn't blink, didn't growl, didn't bare teeth, just watched. Those yellow eyes locked on Jacob's window, like they'd seen what lay inside and were waiting for the right minute to come collect. The candle flames jumped, tall and sudden, like breath had hit him. Jacob didn't lie down that night, didn't say much neither, just sat out on the porch, shotgun on his lap, the old family Bible open at his feet. The pages flapped like they were reading themselves, though there wasn't a wind strong enough to stir the grass. Around midnight, when even the bugs had given up their songs, Jacob rose, stepped to the edge of the porch, cedar ash under boot. He didn't raise the gun to fire, just held it like a name. "I'm sorry," he said, voice cracking but clear. "I was blind, but I see now." The woods didn't stir, no wind, just the trees leaning in a little closer. "I don't care." It wasn't a woman's voice, wasn't a beast's. It was both, spoken through ash and grave dust and hunger. Jacob dropped to one knee, not from fear, from understanding. Pressed his palm into the cedar ash, like maybe it know he meant it. Behind him, Erin opened a door, her eyes already wet. Something moved in the woods, close, and the night started over. Chapter 7. They had been left like a signature. When mornin' finally shoved the dark back across the hills, the sun didn't rise proud, it crept. Pale, tired, and too soft to burn off what the night had done. Light came slow over the Miller place, spillin' like sorrow, not a blessin'. No rooster crowed, no coffee hissed, no smoke curled out of the chimney Jacob had bricked up with calloused hands and patient sweat. Just stillness, and not the restful kind. It was the kind that settles over a place like it's holdin' its breath. Erin stepped out barefoot, nightgown stickin' to her legs, her arms wrapped round her middle like she was holdin' herself together. She didn't call for Jacob, didn't ask where he'd gone, just looked, like the forest might speak before her mouth could. And it did. The shotgun lay neat beside the door, barrel pointed at the woods like Jacob had kept vigil until the last second. The cedar ash line, once thick as scripture, had clean slice that broke the circle, not scattered, not kicked, but cut. Like someone with a steady hand and no rush had opened it on purpose. There wasn't any blood or any kind of mess, just quiet. But under the rocking chair, the wood had changed. 3 deep gouges carved slow through the grain, not wild scratches, not panic. They were wide, too wide for any coyote, straight and measured, left with intention, like a name signed in claw. And near those marks, laid gentle as a gift, was a braid. Oh, but not just any braid. Twisted tight with cougar hide and human hair, dark as river silt, unmistakably Jacob's. The ends tied in red thread, the kind used for keeping things out. Only this time, it wasn't a word for protection. It was a warning. Erin crouched, slow and still. Her fingers hovered above the offering as her breath caught tight in her chest like a bird trapped behind glass. She didn't touch it. She didn't cry. She stood, stepped back inside, and left the door hanging open behind her. Folks came, like they always do when something breaks that can't be fixed. They gathered at the fence line, whispering, crossing themselves, not quite brave enough to look long. The preacher offered prayer, but Erin shook her head. Sheriff showed up late, left early, spoke in half sentences, and avoided the porch like it might bite. No one crossed the cedar ash. That same evening, Maudie Littlefeather walked down the river path alone, wrapped in her grandmother's prayer shawl, carrying a bundle of old things, the kind the land still knows even if people don't. She didn't speak to the women peeking from behind screen doors, didn't nod at the boys pretending they weren't scared. Just kept to the water's edge, following it to the bend where no birds had nested in years, and the rocks leaned in like they were listening. There, she built her fire. Cedar bark lit by moss soaked in rainwater, juniper, black sage, and a single crow feather wrapped tight in sinew. The flames rose, slow and strange. No heat, just smoke that curled like it was whispering back. Maudie sat close, knees creaking, eyes closed, and she began to sing. Not loud, not for people. Her voice cracked, rough with time, but the words came from deeper than memory. She sang in a language born before county lines, before deeds and titles, the tongue of wind and root. She didn't ask for mercy. She didn't dare. Rather, she asked for balance. She begged the watchers to hear, and behind her, the woods stirred. It wasn't wind, just the shift of branches where none should have moved. As she sang, the hush deepened. Something large stepped soft between the trees, quiet as ashfall, but heavy enough that the ground seemed to notice. Maudie didn't turn, she just kept singing. The thing in the trees didn't growl, it didn't speak, it listened, and tilted its head. The creature's breath low and deep, like a bellows slowing down. It stood there, just at the edge of firelight, where the smoke couldn't quite touch. The wampus cat had fed. The rage in her belly had cooled, maybe just for a while. She didn't cross the fire, not that night, not yet. When the song ended, the flames fell low and the air hung tight. Even the river moved quieter than before. And across the bank, pressed soft into the damp mud like a signature in ink too dark to dry, sat a set of prints, wide as a cougar's, long as a woman's stride. The forest would rest again. For now. Epilogue. Eyes in the hollow. The Miller place sits quiet now, quiet and hollow, like a jaw without teeth. The porch sags low at the middle, boards buckled like an old man's back, and the windows stare out toward the hills with that blank, milky look, like they once saw too much and went blind trying to forget. The barn leans left, half split at the roofline. One door's hangin' by a hinge, swayin' when the wind bothers to pass through. Ain't been latched since someone ran out fast and didn't stop long enough to close it. Weeds have taken the garden rows, tall and thick, twistin' around the fence posts like they're tryin' to choke out what used to grow there. Not even squash will take root anymore. And that field out back, the one where Jacob buried his daddy's mule, ain't been tilled since. No one lives there now. The sheriff cleared out come early spring, claimed he was visiting kin in Kansas, left his badge, his dog, and a truck full of tools sittin' in the driveway, never came back to claim a thing. Word got round he'd seen something up near the bluff, something too big for any wind and too quiet to be human. Whatever it was, it broke something in him. His house sold cheap, but it sat empty. A young couple came to look once, city folks. The woman stepped on the porch, froze like a deer staring down a rifle, and turned white as bone. Didn't say a word. Just got in the car and drove off. Left the man behind her confused and mutterin'. Ain't been no new homes raised on that road since. Old folks speak plain about it. You don't plant nothin' where somethin' unnatural's been sleepin'. The land won't take to it. Corn'll sprout sideways. Fences lean crooked by mornin'. Birds keep their distance. Even the crows steer wide. But the dogs still know. Every fall and every thaw, they lift their heads right 'fore sundown. Hackles rise, tails tuck. They won't go near that hollow. Won't chase rabbits past the tree line. Won't follow scent no matter how strong. They just sit on their haunches and watch, eyes locked on nothing you can see, but every hair on 'em standin' straight. And when the fog rolls in heavy, thick enough to gum up your boots and stick to your ribs, some folks say you can still hear it, that sound. It don't carry right, don't echo like it should. It's low, wet, draggin', like a growl caught in something deeper than a throat. Ain't loud, but it's enough to make your spine twitch and your legs go soft. Maudie Littlefeather still lives by the river, in that stone house half swallowed by trees. Wind chimes clatter even when the air don't move. Her fire stays burnin' now, even in July. She don't come to town much, and when she does, folks part like water around rock. Some still nod, most don't. She walks her garden barefoot, ties red bundles in the trees, presses prayers into the soil, ones passed down before the Bible ever came to Boone County. And when a stranger wanders off the highway or a hunter don't come back by breakfast, she'll rock slow on that porch, wrapped in her shawl like armor, and she'll talk if someone's fool enough to ask. She don't blink when she speaks, her voice don't shake, she just says, "The land remembers," and she watches still. Then she'll turn her face to the hills, and if you're quiet, real quiet, you might hear somethin' stir in them woods. Might not see nothin', but somethin' will be lookin' back.